Darlene, leave us with a smile. The floor is all yours.
All right. Oh, force of habit. Thank you, Sue. Yes, if you're not from Toastmasters, how we do it here. I got it. Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be here tonight with you guys. I'm in the east coast of Canada, Moncton, New Brunswick. So I think we're definitely international because I heard for Australia and all kinds of people out there as well. So that is good. So thank you. So we're going to dive into a little bit about humor. But first of all, I want to make sure that you know where the reaction button is. And don't forget to chat because I like to get people engaged. Also, pen, paper. I'm going to cram as much as I can in a short period of time. Now, the good thing is it's recorded, so you can go back and catch those things that you might not. You will be working. We'll give you some examples. Now, it's not as fun on Zoom, but we'll certainly do what we can. The good thing is you all look the same size and you're all square, right? That was the first joke. All right, we got a couple laughs out of that. We will go from there. So first of all, I'm just going to share my screen, get things set up. If someone can put in the chat that they actually see what they're supposed to see, that would be all right. Sue, here we go. Let's rumble. You got it. All right. So just a few minutes to introduce myself. Yeah, real estate. So you already said a lot about me. I work with entrepreneurs, training businesses, also a realtor. Something you might not know is sharing is caring videos. So that started with the pandemic of only 19. I think I'm now up to 340. I'll share where you can get some of them. It is a great opportunity. All kinds of topics are only good. And you know what? I am your number one cheerleader. So you can find me here, darlenesmith.com or realtordarlenesmith.com. Yes, they told me I was supposed to plug myself like that. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Now, also, I've been known to be called the Energizer Bunny. I'm sure you can't see that at all. And I am a Mickey Mouse fan. If you watch any of my videos, hey, I love Mickey. I have a great collection. I have a whole room in my house. It's all full of Mickey. All right, enough of that. Here's some of the sharing with caring videos that you can see. Check them out. They're all free, average of 4 minutes. So if you'd like to, you are more than welcome to. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how that one got in there. Sometimes I get my presentations mixed up, but that can happen as well. So what we're going to talk about in the workshop is you're going to know how to add some humor to your existing presentations. Here's the most important thing. Yes, you can learn humor. You can. We're also going to increase your little bit of confidence. And don't worry, you're going to keep an eye out for stories that will make you funny. Test out some material and understand why. Why would you want to add funny? Now, I might switch back and forth. Make sure you have your screen on speaker view, the slides. Because I'm a time constraint, I want to make sure that I keep myself on track. So that's why we got a lot of shit. So let's start off on here. Scale 1 to 10. How funny do you think you are now? Put that in the chat. 1 being I'm not very funny, and 5 is I'm hilarious. Start putting those in there as we pile up. Oh, we got some 3s, we got some 1s, got a couple more 1s going in there. Awesome. Some 2s. All right, let's hey, 5. Give me 5. I love it. Glad to see you in there. Right. And I love this one. Depending on the day, that could be as well. So great job on that. And make sure you put that down yourself as where you're actually starting on the thing. So we got a good mixture. So humor, of course, it's not just telling jokes. And of course, we hear some people dry humor and just not funny. It could be in the moment humor. I'm an in the moment humor, which is probably the hardest of them all. Wasn't born funny, don't have a funny bone in my body. Put in the chat which one of these kind of relate to you, right? That's a 5 on a 10 scale. Okay, Jim, I love how you corrected that as well. I see I love mixing it up. So put some in there in the moment. I like that in the moment they are. So what are we looking for reactions? Well, we're looking for that smile. All right. If you haven't got it on, I want you to show me right now your biggest smile. Let's see it. All right. Come on, some people there we go. All participation. Then when some people get the we want the laugh is what we want. Some people are just, confused. And of course, yeah, we can't have that silent stuff. It does happen as well. Now, you know what? Not everybody's going to get in the audience 100% participation. Not everybody is going to enjoy and laugh at you. It's not you, it's them. Just to let. There was a study with a little bit of, to give you a little bit of history here, is that people believe that just let me move this. Okay, I got to move the box around. I'll move you over there. People believe we're either funny or we're not funny. Well, it may not be. It's something you can learn, just like learning on the Python or to use Zoom without muting yourself. We've all had to learn that. So that's one myth. And people assume that humor is the same as just being funny. Well, not necessarily. There is a difference. So you have to understand that. Humor is not comedy. It is not just standing up doing one joke after a joke after a joke, particularly in a contest, right? And it has to do with the mindset that you have to believe, first of all, that you can be funny and that you can add humor to your. Just put a thumbs up on the reaction if you think that, yeah, I can do this. I can improve my humor. Let's see some of those reactions go up there. Well, serious business people hold the false belief that humor is in opposition to seriousness. Now, not necessarily, right? A lot of workplaces, and adding this even to into contests, it helps strengthen. You know, I do some part-time work in a political world as well, and they think it's all serious there, and some of them just have to loosen up. And that's what you got to do. People feel the risk of using humor is too high. No, it's not. The reality is that when people use humor at work, right, that it's good. So just put in the chat, just put a yes or no in there. Do you use humor at work now? Right? Because why is that important? What's that got to do with Toastmasters? You have to practice somewhere. You have to practice somewhere as well. Also, too, while you're putting in there, what is one moment that someone made you laugh? So while you're putting that in the chat, while you're writing this down, I want you to think about the first thing that came to mind. Now, to get bonus points, you would put down listening to you, Darlene. That would be a bonus point. I'm just throwing that one out there, right? You know, or just, you know, this be up cues, of course, right? Understanding the roles of humor in speeches. Well, what is it? Now, I know there's two ways of spelling it, depending on what country you're in. For this one, I took the short way. I left out the U. All right. So both are correct. Remember, everybody has different taste and style, right? So that's sharing a GIF in the team chat. All right, got that. So we all have different tastes and understanding that it's not you, it's them, right? Seinfeld, any Seinfelds out there? If we do, let's put a heart there in the reaction button. Some people think it was one of the great shows of all times. Others, well, they just think it's okay. Right? So it's kind of putting in the surprises and the misdirections. And that's where the key thing is, right? And it's kind of when you don't expect it. So we're looking to find the funny. Now, will this happen overnight? No. Will you learn everything in 45 minutes? No. But will you learn something? Yes. So how do we get it and where do we find it? Well, of course, just a little statistics for you. When you laugh, which is what we want people to do, the brain releases a sort of a cocktail of hormones, and it makes us feel happier. And when we're trusting, so when we've got it, we want it. And here's an example. Do this tomorrow. Put in there, Will, that at work you're going to add some humor, right, in your professional interactions, and you're going to serve up some cocktails to your work people. So put Will in the chat. You're going to do that. That's something, and you need to practice with them. Smiling and laughter has to release these cocktails, and we don't do enough of it, and we need to. Now, one of the things, of course, with Toastmasters and doing things in contests is that you need to stop long enough and let people enjoy the humor, right? When you're doing contests, you know, 7 minutes and 30 seconds is the max. You want to plan it around 6 minutes. Why? Because you want to give people time to laugh. I've seen too many people where they've had a great humor and we're still laughing and they're on. So we want to capture the audience. We want to create that connection. That's what's important for there. And we want to make the message memorable, right? And of course, the bonus is if you win contests because you've added that humor, that's what it's all about. Now, engagement. If I was doing this live, I would be doing so much more engagement. You'd be raising hands. You would be repeating after me. You would be clapping. You're giving people high fives, but we're not. We're doing on Zoom, so we're doing what we can. As you see, we've already been pretty inactive already. What I am doing, I'm keeping your attention. So this is not nap time. So engagement is fantastic, right? Make people laugh. You get their attention, and you keep them hooked through your speech. Now, a speech is not just a whole bunch of jokes, right? There's some stories of things that are linked together, but you got to spread them out. Trying to make emotional connection, right? We've heard those stories that from the highs to low. Laughter, universal language. That's what we want to do. So, of course, when people laugh together, they feel a sense of camaraderie, connection with the speaker. That's where we want to get it. And this connection makes your message relatable and impactful, which was really we wanted to do. Memorable speeches, that's really what we want to do. Now, have you ever noticed how you tend to remember speeches that made you laugh? Put laugh in the chat box if that is something that you do, and think of one. And that is because you become the most rememberable person that there is. Now, here's an example where I don't know if any of you've been to AGMs where you had to give financial reports. How many people put the thumbs up on the chat? How many people agree they're usually boring? Yeah, they are. Well, I have created a reputation where I am rememberable by making a financial report entertaining and engaging. I use the audience, and I still have people today. You were the most entertaining financial. We knew about the numbers, and you remembered it was. So why? Because I put humor in that. So think about this. If you could put humor into a treasurer's report at an AGM, we could certainly do it here. And that is what you want to know. So that's just a good example to make it memorable. You should be writing down what would be somebody's speech that you remembered. You know, put it in the chat, put it down on your paper. Who comes to mind for that? And of course, diffusing tension is also kind of an item to be able to do. And this is being in the moment, but taking this, there's skills that you can use every day, but skills you can use in your contest. And this is a great way to kind of break the tension. Here's an example where I had to introduce, it would be like a governor for you. I was giving some information. I reached under the lectern, and the bottle of water that someone left the cap off spilled all over the floor. What a mess. Now, it could be embarrassing. Yes. People were like, oh, but I turned that to humor. And I said, well, we wanted to make sure that we had a clean walkway for you. Also, I didn't have a chance to kind of dust off my shoes, so I put a little water. That's a way of adding humor. So I took the tension in the room from the disaster and I switched it around. These are examples to show you. And as we're going through this, you should be thinking, oh, what can I use in my own life to be able to do that? What are some of the techniques, and why would we want to actually do this, right? You've all had those scenarios. World champion speech. Oh, love that. We got some speeches. Let us play. This is the way we play along. Just gonna do it. Where are we? We are. So, capturing the audience. At the beginning here, one of the things we want to make is people stand out and what do they remember. So I want you to write down, put in the chat as well, what are 2 things from my introduction that makes me stand out from others? So what are 2 things? Put that in the chat. I gave you the answers. See, I didn't tell you that it's going to set you up. This is also something that you can use in your presentations and as a recall, right? So that's exactly what I am doing right now, putting it into there. So no, it's the one that I did, Jim. When I introduced myself, what from the presentation is what we're looking for. Got some of them. All right, that's really what we're looking for. And so that's where, right, in your speech, do you do callbacks? Yeah, you do that. You can do those as well. And this is an example where you can call back and get. You were sharing, okay, we got some different things. So yeah, I knew that you didn't think there's going to be a test. This is all about humor. And it's interesting because what you pick up and answer also decides, oh, what were you actually thinking about? And did I get your attention? Maybe not. Of course, we want to reduce that nervousness. We're all nervous. We've all been through those. Adding humor can relax you and everybody else as well. Of course, a well-placed joke or witty comments can break that ice. Not just because I think you agree that, people nervous, if you've done any speaking, any contest, just put nervous in the chat box if that's you as well. Now, of course, one of the things we want to do is build rapport with the audience. And how do we do that? What are some things that we have in common? Well, I'm in District 45. Most of you are Toastmasters, but it's also letting people know that you're human and that you're listening. And in building rapport, a very good example I used is that at one time I'm not a good speller, right? How many people of you are not spellers, right? You're kind of connecting with those. We got that. So I'm building rapport. And I knew I wasn't a good speller when I got up and asked, how do you spell TV? Now, I meant to say television, but I asked to spell TV. The sad part, folks, is this really did happen. All right. So again, I build rapport with you because of a simple thing. All right. So you got to laugh out of that. I like that, Peter. There we go. Also, it's improving your message. It's entertaining, enjoyable. I'm used to being entertaining more. I had to remember that my goal is to help train you and teach you on a few things, not just entertain you at the same time, because that would just not be. And it's making the message stick and help them make the stand out. Basic principles, make sure that the jokes are appropriate. You all know that. Make sure that they're related to the topic. Sometimes people put things in and it doesn't. That story didn't relate. That joke, that had nothing to do with it. Of course, we all know, don't get the inappropriate ones. Use it, a little bit. It's not just one joke after another, because you got to give people a chance to kind of things. Most important is, hey, practice it, deliver it, record it, get feedback, be yourself, and let your personality show through. A lot of times what happens out there, I know none of you people here would be doing that, but you are trying to be like another speaker because you watched that speaker and that's what the speaker did. And I want to be that speaker because they were so successful. Oh, that was a mouthful, but no, be you, right? We've got the observation humor, which is observing. So this was an example that, this is being in the moment. I've already given you an example of using it every day. So what you got to start doing is looking in your life and thinking, what are the funny things that are happening to me? And as you're going through, you should be jotting down, oh, I remember that incident. I remember that, right? Something that's going to resonate with the audience and, looking at callbacks and do. Now, here's a great one, playing on words. We all know how important it is. And it's like, if you get some feedback, well, what word is different? Well, there are a lot of words that you can certainly use some play with. And here is an example. This is a real life. Sometimes I wonder, what was I doing? Right? What was I doing? So playing on words, I'm going to explain a situation. So I work part-time, sometimes in a political office. We have homeless people. The gentleman came in. He was kind of, way out there, not really there. And I never thought about anything. And, all of a sudden, he reached in and he pulled out a 2-foot machete, right? And I thought, whoa, this is getting serious. Now, that's a real life situation. I can do one of two things. What if I had to tell this story again. What if I add humor to it? Well, he came in and he was sitting there and all of a sudden he pulled out this machete. Now it was 2 feet because I'm a realtor and I'm a pretty good judge at how big it is. Now I might be off an inch or two, right? Now I know in his mind, he was not in a political office. He was thinking that he was in a jungle and he wanted to go and cut down the trees. Do you see what I just did there? right? Just just give a thumbs up on if you got what I just did. I took a real life tense situation, and again, this really did happen, and I've added humor to this. This again is showing you examples. If we had more time and we were live, you would be doing more examples of these as well. So that was just a play on words, just playing on words on what can make the difference. Now, storytelling, that's what it's all about. And how do we do that? Right? It's adding some humor, some twists in it to kind of get the effects. And you're going to say, well, what if I don't have a story? Well, you do. Can you borrow a story? I could. Make sure you give credit, but some people say, I'm not funny, I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to borrow a story. Well, here's a great example of one that I'm borrowing. I can't use it in my story because my grandmother's not living. So here would be how I would add some humor to it. So a friend of mine, he's get this notice on his phone, and it was his 78-year-old grandmother just gave him a text message. And he was surprised because she never texted before. But the first text was adorable. Why? Because it said, Dear Andrew, trying out texting, love you, your grandmother. Now, I'm thinking, she thinks it's a letter. Oh, she doesn't understand what it is. So I said, hey, Grandma, it's a text. You don't have to include all that. Her response was, Dear Andrew, right? Sometimes you get it through and it's just not happening. Okay, love your grandmother. Okay. My favorite part was love your grandmother, as if you didn't know it. Well, gets confusing. So he had a good time in Texas. Dear Andrew, I hope you had a good time in Texas. Love Grandma. Grandma, who's grandma? As if you didn't know who the grandma was, right? So you're starting to see that as the story, there's many. Now, he went to Switzerland, and she said, Dear Andrew, Switzerland, this is the fun part, WTF. All right, you guys are thinking, you think that WTF means something, right? So he called his grandmother, and he asked him, what does WTF mean? And she said, well, some of my bridge told me it is, well, that's fun. Well, that's exactly what it means. So he didn't try to explain to his grandmother, right? Now we need more WTFs, right? Well, that's fun in our lives. So that, again, just an example of a story, how adding the words, adding some humors into it, and taking a real life situation. It's a simple little thing, but a lot of you could probably relate to that, and all kinds. Just put relate in the chat box if you could relate to something like that. As I'm giving you the examples, that should be triggering in your mind of something that has happened to you. And you can see the variety of everyday stories. We have them. And I know some of you are going to say, well, I don't live an exciting life to have things like that happen to me. No, you don't need to, right? You can borrow the stories. You can add the stories. We all have them. I love that. I'm Swiss. Oh, I forgot. There's something I should have used another country, right? But they can relate. Now, if I had, I should have said Australia because I knew somebody in the audience is Australia. So that's being able to make those adjustments at the time, right? And I shouldn't have said Texas. I probably should have said New York, right? Because a lot of you are in New York, right? So again, how you can take and how you can move it is simply on that. Oh, this one, the old self stuff, right? It's making like jokes about yourself. Now, I've already did a couple of them already, right? You can make it. Now, it's having a balance to avoid the part where, you're not undermining your capability, but it certainly is a way to do it. Now, these are the fun ones, right? And just to delay, we're going to go into a little more, these are some techniques I want to make sure you use. Exaggeration. That's taking a story and exaggerating a little bit with it. The contrasts and the rule of three. So we're going to dive into a little bit of what this means. So here would be an example of an exaggeration. Now I'm going to use this one. The only acting you ever need to see at the Oscars is when people act like they're not mad that they lost. Nicole Kidman was smiling so wide she should have won an Oscar at the Emmy at the Oscars for a great performance. I was like, well, if you had done that in the movies, you would have won an Oscar, girl, right? Now, this is kind of exaggerating, some of the activities. So it's taking the situation and making something out of it, right? A normal thing. This one, I should have said, right? You didn't win the contest at Toastmasters, right? And you're sitting there thinking, no big deal, right? But you actually are. So there's many examples on there as well. The contrast is where you take two different things and make them kind of opposites. I can tell you that I'm getting older because my Kindle is turning into self-help library, right? It's not interested in books like Think and Grow Rich anymore. Okay, I'm interested in life-changing magic of tidying up. So this is taking one extreme to another. Now, again, as these examples go, bing, 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 a few things should be going off into your minds and saying, oh, what can I say? What can I do from that? This one is my favorite, is the rule of 3. And this is one, and you'll see many professionals use this, and we always do it and such. There's 30 ways to shape up for summer. Of course, number 1 is eat less. Number 2 is eat more, exercise more. Number 3, what was I talking about again? I'm so hungry, right? So in the rule of 3, what happens is the first 2 make sense, but the last one is kind of a misdirection because you think you know what I was going to say, but you didn't know what I was going to say because you read it on the screen because you can read faster than me. But that's the way we set up and add to it. So the last one is your punchline. Now, let's we've got another one here, and you can just put it in the chat. Oh, well, it didn't work. So you were supposed to put in breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? We all know that one. That's pretty simple, pretty standard. Blood, sweat, and of course, tears is not supposed to be there on the screen, so you're not supposed to see that either. But these are all 3. Lights, camera, action. So if you're using them, we all know the answers. We all know what it's all about. And so here, now this is where you're going to practice, and you're going to have to put it in the chat and write it down as well. But I was nervous about the trip, so I took blank, blank, and blank. So the first 2 obviously are going to be things that make kind of sense. And the last one is going to be some surprise. Like it could be, if I was saying breakfast, lunch, and then swimming time, you're like, no, you're supposed to say dinner. So now here's a good one. Breakfast, lunch, and my mother-in-law. Love it. That's an excellent example. A map, a compass, and a detour. Love it. You guys have gotten this. My flashlight, my phone, and my mom. Yes. Are you seeing the trend on this? This is one of the favorites that we use all the time. I took breakfast, lunch, and my accent. Love that. Yeah, you guys are getting this one, right? So you see, it sounds simple when you're doing it. And if we had more time, we would actually take this to the next. Blood, sweat, and a towel. That one I love. Hey, the doctor is in the house and getting it, right? So you guys definitely got this one down, adding it to. What happens is that as we're going through some of this is going to be top of mind. The next couple of days, you're going to notice things because you're going to think, that crazy Darlene? Oh, yeah, that's what she was saying. Lights, camera, bathroom. Yes, love it. These are great stuff. Make sure you save the chat. You got some great interest in there. So very helpful. One of my favorites to use. Just put a 3 in there if you think that's an easy one to use, easy one to try, right? To put into action. If you had more time, I'd actually get somebody to come out and extra luggage map and a psychiatrist. I love it. You guys, listen, you got the humor going here. That's awesome. You can have a lot of fun with that. The thing is that you got to practice it. So practicing at Toastmasters, but also practice it at work, right? Give some examples of going through there. We got that one. So those are good. One of the things, you won't have time to do it right now, but jot down 10 or things about yourself or others that you're kind of like, what were some of my funny things? And then the second step is creating, certainly, some jokes, some comedy techniques from the observations. And of course, when you're doing a speech, you got to get the topics and how to relate something to it. Well, that's where, right, bring it into the storylines, and you got to try it. It may work, it may not. And write down one joke you're proud and share it with somebody else. I was nervous about my trip, so I took my medication, bib, and my booze. I love that. There's a good, all right. Good one, Michelle, right? So that is one of them. And as you begin to do it more, it becomes what? Well, I'd have you repeat, it would become easier. It's definitely practice, practice, practice. Now, are you going to get it the first time? Probably. Sometimes yes, sometimes not, but it's okay. One of the things that you want to do is not give up, right? Then what you got to do is kind of take some tests and kind of memorize, okay, what else can I do? Being able to, think on your feet in the moment. One of the best practices with that is putting humor is with the table topics, right? When you're doing table topics, one of your goals should be, how do I add humor into the table topics, right? It's only a minute, 2 minutes, and you kind of get a great way of practicing it. So that's a technique that you can use as well moving forward. And I guess certainly testing it out. The best critics are people, are friends, people that know you and they don't think you're funny, or you may think you're funny. They'll give you the true honest. I was nervous about my trip. Okay, got that one there. All right. So personal stories, relatable experiences, right? We talked about my poor spelling as an example in there. I got a couple more here to go as well. Those are funny moments. And so here's reflect on what's happening in your life. You should always be kind of keeping, adding a twist to it, an embarrassing situation. Yeah, I definitely talked about that. And the personal touch to your speech, it can relate to the audience. That's one thing about it. And of course, the way you structure your stories is important. Here's one of them. You look at it, and I used to travel a lot. And so I was actually in Calgary, Alberta. And so I came out of the airport, got in the cab, and ready to go to the hotel. So I gave the address to the cab driver, and he says, well, ma'am, you just have to walk across the walkway, and the hotel's door is right on the other side. Now, the worst part is that actually happened. Now, there's two ways that I can take that. Lessons learned, that you check to see how far it is from an airport to a hotel and what transportation that you take in between. Another thing is that I can add humor to that. How? Well, I got into the cab and I say, hey, my first time in Calgary. I'm so excited. I'm staying at the Delta Hotel, right? And so, how long a ride it would be. And if the cab driver could do a different response, he could say something like, yeah, I sure know it's your first time here in Calgary. And by the way, I just want to let you know that we're already here and the fare is $0. Right? So he's adding humor to it. I'm like, because you just have to walk across there. Would you like me to help you with the luggage? So again, an example of in a situation that, in the worst part, does happen. I hope that doesn't happen to any of you people like that. But these are things, examples. Now, the reason I use the variety of stories during this training is to have you think of different things in your life. The different stories in different activities will trigger different things for you to think about. If I was talking all about work, you'd know. I've talked a little bit about work ones. I've talked about personal ones, right? We've talked about um, things that different activities, different works, different things, hats that I wear. Some of my weaknesses and how I've turned them around into positive. So those are all things that add to the story and making sure that they do connect, right? That's the hardest part. Sometimes in speeches, we throw something in and away we go. Of course, the words, we know that the words is the most important thing. Very important using descriptive language, right? And if you look at the cab driver incident, it was just walk across. When I added some extra words, we got in there as well. Timing, delivery, we all know it's practice, 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 knowing when those punchlines are. For goodness sakes, give us time to laugh. If that is one area that sometimes we don't do enough, is we don't give people time to laugh. We're still thinking about it, and you get some great ones as well. Test the waters, right? Incorporate many of the personal stories, test it out in your friends, family, fellow Toastmasters, getting it, because you're going to get different answers from everybody, getting feedback about it. And remember, don't take this personally. Everybody is going to see it from different shoes because they're sitting in different seats, even though they hear the same thing. They have different perspectives, and that's good. And you only take what you think you need to, right? That's really where it goes. So, of course, it's making things that are relevant, having all kinds of, we talked a lot about the contrasts, right? We look at what can do there, how to exaggerate things. These are just some of the key topics that I would suggest you use. The more you do it, the funnier you're going to get, right? You can also do some visual aids. Now, in online, I'm limited to my square box here, but I could have some props as well to be able to use. The background could be something I could use here as well. And of course, all important, the words, the words, the words. And of course, practice it. There's different ways of the styles. And it's using the variety, online again, using the variety where you can kind of lean in, or I can take my voice slowly. Or, you know what? I was so excited when I finally got to visit Calgary, right? So it's adjusting these to go to the next levels. Of course, hey, what was a Toastmasters or a human speech that you remember? Why do you remember it? Write that down or put it in there. Is there one? What comes to your mind? And when you think about it, what comes to your mind is, oh, what did you remember? So people remembered that. That is a way of remembering, oh, yeah, I like that. I was at one of the Toastmaster International conventions, and one of the gentlemen came out. He walked on stage, and he pretended to light a cigarette. And that's how he started his speech at the International Speech Contest. Did I remember that? Yeah. He used a prop. It was something different. And so it left an impression with me. So don't forget, how you show up. There's some great things in your life, right? Add them to this. This is where, you can make fun of yourself in a good way, right? It's kind of having that bounce, poking fun at yourself, and it adds to the rateability as well. Now, sometimes, here's another good thing, is that I actually had jaw surgery, and sometimes my jaw gets stuck. So I have, 16 screws? So if a screw comes loose, I really know. And sometimes my words get stuck with that. And that's the thing. I'm like, okay, it just did. So just made a joke of it. Laugh at yourself. It shows that, you don't take yourself too seriously. It makes you more likable. A human touch to your speech, having that good balance, adding to the confidence that you have, right? Acknowledging your imperfections, maintain the credibility as well. We got through there. Zipping through, just making sure, serious topics, right? I talked about a very serious topic and how we could add humor to that. What that does is it lightens it up for the audience. So, it's not all doom and gloom, has to be. You can have some in there, but you don't necessarily have to have it as well. Visual aids, there are, of course, using the hands, right? Using the facial expressions, that's important. If we had some pictures, we could throw up some pictures here. How you move, right? Movements on stage is a little harder. Yes, of course, if you're doing the speech online, you want to be back from the camera so that they can see more of your body, so you can add to there as well. And it's, paying attention to the audience. What can they do? What can they do? What do? You got to practice, practice, practice. You got to test it, test it, test it. And then you got to adjust it, adjust it, adjust it. Oh, I love those threes. Your goal is increase your confidence as it goes, right? You're not, all of them are going to be home runs, but you need to work on, take one of these skills and kind of work on it at once. You can't do them all at once because you're just it will just be more challenging. You're going to think, oh my goodness, we can't get this. Now, I know we got some question and answers, but I like your feedback. And here's a couple things where I took feedback and give me 3 points that, the highlights from here. And if you look at it, did I add some humor on this screen? Yes. How did I do that? Just put that in the chat. Where is the humor on this one slide? Based on something that I do by just asking for feedback. Who picks that up? Who can put that in there? Right? So again, it's using some different items. Yes, the doctor's in there. The key points. What were the 3 key points that you learned from me going through this very quickly, giving you some different examples, giving you the tips? The key point, what did I say? I was a realtor. It's a callback. It's relating. And when you look at that, what's going to stay in your minds? What are some of the things that you can use there moving forward as well? You guys, awesome group, awesome audience. I know that that's a lot in that short period of time. I love it. Rule of 3, red is the punchline. I love that. Different things pick up different things. So Sue, I'm a Toastmaster, so respect at the times as well. I think I'm doing it right in there. The timer is doing a great job on there. Love your feedback. Any questions? I hope that I served you well. And I'm going to stop showing my screen here. Let's go put that back. Hopefully we just got me on the screen. I got Roger up on the screen. Hey, Roger, how you doing?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Darlene. I think we all had a good laugh and learned a lot, and that was really awesome. I don't know how you did it, but you put so much in such a short period of time. Wow. We, of course, want to give people also the chance to ask you some direct questions. So please raise your hand. You have the reactions at the bottom. Just raise your hand, and whoever I see next in line, I will just call up. Diane, go ahead.
Oops. Thank you for that presentation. I was wondering what you have found to be most effective online for humor, perhaps something that's even better online than it is in person.
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for that, for Diane. And just before I just want to mention one thing, is that if you've noticed that I repeated a few things, a few key points throughout the presentation to sink it in. So online is definitely the hardest. And so you have to use what you have. Now, here's the thing, we're used on stage. And so you know how we can move on stage to anchor different positions? We can do that online. Online, you can lean in and you can go back because that shows. Hand gestures are very important, but so is the eye contact, right? It's making sure, where do we go? Of course, we know that the background says a lot on that. If you were doing something, can you change the background? There is a way you can do that as well. A lot of people, what happens online is interactions, they forget that. I lost count of how many times I was probably not as many as I normally would. How many times I asked you guys to interact and engage? Yeah, sometimes you had trouble keeping up. So I'm getting into those. Online is the hardest. The voice, it has to do with a lot. use it. This is where using the pause is even better. Because what do we all hate? Silence. Right? It's even better online. So it's like, just kidding. Facial expressions, even more important, because usually they're only seeing so much into going above. Is that helpful? I'm going to call you Darlene. Why don't I just call you Diane and read your name, right?
Thank you.
All right, great question.
That was a great question. So who else? Come on, guys, take advantage while we have Darlene here. Also, feel free to put her something in the chat room. She asked explicitly for some feedback. Send her an email for this wonderful workshop so we can help her as much as she helped us. Anybody else likes to raise their hand, ask a question? I see Jim. Jim, go ahead.
In the in-person arena, I'm curious. I'm considering doing some physical comedy in a next contest cycle. Thoughts about that? I mean, all the way from sight gags to slapstick.
There is adding the physical part, Jim, is a good way. You can do a little bit of it online, but you would have to be, back enough. It's not as effective, but it still is, because what happens is that we don't want to get somebody just standing up there and they stand in the center of the stage and blah blah blah. They just data dump, right? And you have to be fair to the audience, because you're anchoring stories, but you're also being fair to the audience, because they all get to see part of you. And that's an important with the movements. One thing when I was training, one thing they taught us, when people, ask questions, you actually stand at the opposite end of the stage so that everybody has view in between. I'm a big one on adding whatever, some people, it's in your speeches, there's different items that you can do. I'm sure if any of you have seen Darren Lacroix with his, the ouch on the floor, right, moving, standing, doing things like that. Those are, to me, I love those. It's what they call a state change. And when you do a state change, all of a sudden, if people weren't paying attention, they are now. Right. And of course, I think you all probably know about Joe. How you feeling? What does Joe do when you ask him that? You guys know that? Joe Grondin? Okay. Well, if you ever see him, ask him. I won't give away the secret then. Is that helpful, Jim? Need 2 of these. Got it. Okay. See? Double effect, right? All right.
Love it. So who else has a question? Let's take advantage of why we have Darlene here.
I've been, well, you're thinking of a question. I've been in Toastmasters probably, I don't know, about 10 years or so. I've been at a lot of the international conventions. I have competed in speech contests as well. I bet you can't guess what speech contest would be my favorite.
Humor.
Love it. You guys got it, right?
So I have a question. Can you say something about timing and how is it just giving them, I know it's more than just giving them a chance to laugh. Timing is also about when you give the punchline.
That is true. So there's 2 parts on that. Is you should always have just a little pause before you give that punchline, because it gives our chance of our brain to kind of catch up. We call it, sometimes people step on the punchline because they went so fast that we missed it. So it's just adding that little breath, even if it's just taking a breath and then delivering the punchline, adding a little extra energy into that. And the laughter is a judgment, but you will know that, okay, they're laughing hard, they're just laughing a bit. And that's where you can do it. Now that's where the timing, that's why in speeches you have to leave that extra. The idea is, 4 or 5 seconds, 6 seconds, that's probably good for a laugh. Unless it's something that you just blew them over, you really can't continue until you've got control back. You've got their attention. Are they still laughing? So it does take some time in some situations where it could be just a couple seconds, some it may be a little more seconds because of the bigger response from the audience. It is a challenge, right? And knowing that pace. So don't step on your punchline. Does that help? Where are we, Dr.
Well, in Zoom, it's hard to even know that there's any response at all because they turn all the sound off. So you have, and you can hardly see anybody. So one of the people who's talked here said what he does is he does some throwaway lines after his joke that, you know, makes sense, but they don't do anything for the speech, just to give people a chance to laugh and not worry about what they heard.
No, that's a good point. You're right. Yeah, we're so used to seeing everybody and seeing a reaction, and when the contest you don't. So that's where you just have to add, that's a good tip there, or just adding a couple seconds so you're assuming, right, that people are having that opportunity to laugh. And even if they're not, you set the pace. So if you do that in the beginning, that knows that then people will know, you know what, it's okay for me to laugh for a few minutes because she's going to wait for us. We always think as Toastmasters or speakers, no dead space. We can't. And sometimes we just need time to get. That's sometimes in speeches where somebody will take us down very low. You know, we're sad, and then all of a sudden they don't use enough time to bring us back up to a high note, right? So you need to make those adjustments in timing as well. That's one thing I noticed in some of the speeches.
We have actually a question in the chat room, and one of our esteemed members is asking the following question. What percentage of an international speech contest speech should include humor? So what percentage of an international speech contest speech should include humor?
Keith, that is an excellent question. Some people think it doesn't have to include any at all. I disagree. It should include some humor, and it doesn't have to be a whole lot. You know, percentage-wise, that is a good question. Maybe about throwing them in. You know, you've got a 7-minute speech. You know, you wouldn't probably 1 per minute, right? As maybe a guideline, or 5. Kind of using maybe 20% is, and again, it's using them if it adds to the story. Sometimes forced humor, you've heard that before, people are throwing it in, I got to be funny somehow, but I can't. All right, because it doesn't lend to it. So very good question. You'll see if you look at some of the past and most, international speech contests, yes, they're inspiring and motivation and things, but if you look at it, the humor always is an important piece. Because think about it. What did I tell you? One of the one I remembered right off the bat with an international speech contest, right? The humor part of it. So use that as a guideline. It depends more on your story, but that would be a guideline.
Wonderful. And we have another question. Another esteemed member of ours is asking, do you have any tips for inserting humor into a speech that is emotionally heavy? Should humor be sprinkled in or isolated from the dramatic content?
That's a good question, and you're right. It is the one thing we don't want to do is keep the people down, right? And so sometimes I think it's a good idea just to inject a little bit, and it kind of throws it off in being, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I was in a situation, something as to, all I was thinking. If you look at the example I used with the guy with the 2-foot machete, that was a very dramatic situation, right? And I could have just left it at that. But you see, when I added the humor, you actually learn more from the story, right? I took it from 2 perspectives. I said, in his mind, he wasn't in an office, he was in a jungle, right? So you throw in a different perspective on these heavy situations, right? And it's just giving people to kind of bring it back. Now, I agree. I've heard a lot of speeches where the emotions is too heavy and they keep it down. And what happens is that you need to be able to bring some people back up for a period of time. So yes, putting a little bit, it doesn't have to be big laughs. It just has to be something that just breaks that attention, right? And it doesn't have to be a lot. Just by saying he thought he was in a jungle, that added to mine. Good one, Vicky. That's a lot of good things like that.
And thank you so much, Darlene. It was a really, really good answer also. And I see Vicky showing us green. Was that I will allow one more question.
Excellent questions, I must say. You guys are tougher than I thought.
Yellow, 3, 2, last chance. All right, you had your chance, but you have her contact details. So feel free to reach out to her, give her some feedback, and I'm sure she'll happily also answer any additional questions. Thanks so much, Darlene. That was very, very helpful, interesting, and above all, I believe you all had a good laugh tonight.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.